Welcome to the next in this series of webinars where we're looking at overcoming some of the challenges you face in rental businesses. Today's webinar is on managing costs. I'm Diane Bannister. I'm the Managing Director of Intelligent Dialogue. We're a training and development company that specialise in commercial conversations with customers, whether that's sales or service. And we also help our clients develop their people leaders and their managers as well. We've had over 25 years experience in the rental sector.
And I'm Guy van der Knaap. I'm the Managing Director of MCS. We are a rental software provider and have been providing purely rental management software for 40 years now. We've got clients in over 30 countries in the world and over 10 languages as well. We believe that our conversations with our clients have given us a unique insight into the rental industry. So why are we combining together Intelligent Dialogue and MCS? Well, we realize that rental is a complex process, and it's really great if you have the software and the processes in place. But if you don't have the people and the training, then it's not going to work. And vice versa. If you have great people and great training, but you don't have the software and you don't have the processes in place, then you can't get ahead in this industry. So a combined approach was the best approach to look at. So Diane, tell us a little bit about this webinar series and where we currently are.
Okay, so if you haven't already checked out the first one, that was on increasing revenue, and it's worth having a look at that if you're interested in how you can increase your top line and at the right rate, you can charge the correct rental rates. Today's webinar is on managing costs. Guy will talk us through that in a moment. The third and next webinar is on increasing customer satisfaction, because that's absolutely critical for customer retention. And the final webinar will be on improving consistency, which is so important across a multi-sited business, which rental often is. So Guy, what are we covering today?
Great, so we're going to dive deep into rental costs and how to optimize all of those. We have to break down costs into fixed costs and variable costs. And fixed costs we're not really going to be dealing with today. Your land and your buildings, not much we can talk about there. But your variable costs can be broken down into certain areas, and we can try and go through each of those. So talking about your people costs, and they are most likely going to be your largest costs in the business. And then we can go on to your transport costs, which are getting higher and higher over the period of time, and how can we make sure that they are the best they can be. And then thinking about the maintenance cost, where we've got all of this equipment and it needs to be maintained, and what can we do to achieve better optimization there. And then those sort of purchasing decisions, that depreciation, that capital and interest costs that hit the business, and what else is there that we can do for that. So a real sort of deep dive into those costs. But people are really key here, aren't they, Diane? So tell us a little bit about the people.
Well, as you said, Guy, people costs, labour costs are probably up there as one of your biggest costs in your business. So it's really important that people are productive, that you have high performing teams across the business, but particularly at depot level. There's an interesting statistic that a happy employee can be 20% more productive than another employee. So I thought it might be useful to actually have a look at the four components of what makes a happy employee. The first is employee engagement. And what I mean by that is their belief in and their commitment to you as an employer and a brand. How well your managers are managing and connecting with your employees. The second area is job satisfaction. We all come to work for reasons more than money, although money is important. The third area, which is particularly important for younger people, is that they can see a development path. That might be a career path that they can move through an organisation, but it's also that they can develop their skills and confidence in their areas of work. And the fourth area, as you would expect, is employee health and well-being. That contributes to overall happiness of employees. So to have all of those things, you need good local leaders that you can trust to deliver and achieve their objectives. But it's really important that they don't deliver at the expense of their people. It's often said that people don't leave jobs, they leave managers, and you don't want a churn of people because there's a cost to that in your business. And there's a statistic here, it's a UK-based statistic, but the average employer spends £3,000 and takes 27 and a half days on average to hire a new worker. Now, obviously, if there's a labour or a skills shortage, it's going to take longer than that and cost more than that. So your managers are absolutely key, both in terms of managing costs, but also in terms of managing and leading people to get the best out of them and creating high-performing teams. So with that as a backdrop, Guy, talk us through a hire process. Let's have a look at the process flow.
Great, yeah, so we're going to continue, and we thought what we'd do is we'd take you through the process flow of a rental, and we can then talk about the costs as we go through that. So we can start right at the beginning there, and that's the sales team, and that's the CRM systems. We move through once we have the order through to the inspection, the delivery. There might be some sort of on-site breakdown and challenges there, and then of course the pickup of that equipment and the turnaround ready for the next rental. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start at the CRM, the sales team. And people often think about the sales team as revenue generating. And of course, they should be, but we want to make sure those costs don't spiral as well. So what should software and process be doing to try and make sure that doesn't happen? So if we think about the quoting and the quotation phases, well, we want to make sure that the quotations are easy to do, but also contain all of the right information, the accessories that need to come along with the main piece of equipment. And the prices, rental prices, are quite complex, but the software should be giving the prices and suggesting what those prices should be. Again, in rental, there's a lot of adaptation of quotations. We know that the customers say, well, what about extending the rental period? What about changing the equipment I've got? And you need to be able to adapt to those quickly, and the software should be able to do that. Then afterwards, once that quote has gone out, we want to make sure that the software is alerting the sales team and making sure that they are aware that there is a quotation out that has not been answered yet, has not been accepted. And the software should be doing that. Again, making sure your sales team are optimizing their time that they have. And another way that this can happen is your sales teams who are out on the road looking for business, they should be able to have software that allows them to see where the customer's sites are near where they are, and therefore optimize what they are doing. So there's a lot of ways that that software and processes can really help the sales team to be as optimized as possible. Right, so then we move on to a little bit about the preparation. So the customer has accepted the quotation, and we're now saying, right, we need to start preparing this. So what do we need to do for that preparation? We need to make sure that the people can be out in the yard with some sort of mobile application. We don't want those your people walking back into the depot and then going back out to the yard, taking the paper back and forth. They need to have all of the information that they want at their fingertips on a mobile application. And that then carries on for after the picking to make sure that there's an inspection of that equipment, again, out in the yard, and that is all then prepared for the rental. We also want to have the software helping us to understand the rotation of stock. We don't want a piece of equipment sitting in the back of the yard that doesn't get used very often, and then there's another one that is constantly being put out to the client. That rotation of stock is not good. It doesn't help with the maintenance of equipment, either the piece of equipment that is not being used or the piece of equipment that is being overused. So we need to get that right as well. And that software should be able to do that without people going back into the depot. So, but of course, all of this doesn't work unless your teams are really trying to make sure they take responsibility for getting that piece of kit out in the right order. So Diane, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, to control costs or to work a process or a system efficiently, people need to own their actions and their decisions. And they also need to understand the consequences if they choose not to do that. I thought it would be useful just to look at the fact that people take ownership if they're engaged. People who are disengaged, it's often said that they stay and quit. So they stay in role, but they've checked out. They do the minimum. They're not concerned about the knock-on effect of what they do or don't do to the overall team. And that can be a bit of a vicious circle. There can be a bit of negative contagion around that. That can spread within a team, and that's obviously something you don't want. Whereas if you've got managers who are working with their teams in such a way that they're encouraging people to take ownership, that ownership builds trust, and trust builds relationships. And that becomes a virtuous circle where people are working together in this ecosystem that is Plant Hire to help each other and to help customers. So Guy, what's the next stage in the rental process?
Great. Okay, so we have prepared our equipment. It's now time to get that equipment out on site. And how can the software and the processes help you there? Well, the first step is making sure that we have a good load list. So getting the piece of equipment on the vehicle in the right order to make sure that when that vehicle turns up to site A and then site B, that the right equipment is available to be taken off of the vehicle. And that all needs to be done, and it needs to be planned by somebody to give enough time in between those different stops so that the driver can get there. And what does that mean? Well, it means that when you're doing the planning, you want the software to help you understand what the distances are between the different sites that you're going to and what the distance is from your branch to the first client. We all know also that in rental, things change very quickly. And once a driver is out and about, we need the ability rapidly to be able to change their journey, to be able to go and pick up something, potentially come back to the branch to deliver something else. So being able to rapidly alter that journey and make sure that that route is optimized by mapping as well. All of those things that software should be able to help you with. Now, of course, there's a big challenge of making sure that you get this right first time, because if you don't, that means you potentially have to go back to the branch and get some more equipment that wasn't on the vehicle to start with. So that's a really important thing, to make sure that those lists are automated and they are out there on applications for your users. Of course, once your driver gets to site, it's really key that they are doing what you want as a business and having the right conversations. Diane, tell us a little bit about what those drivers' conversations can be.
I think drivers are absolutely key in the rental sector. They're ambassadors on site, and that goes beyond wearing branded workwear. How helpful they are, how well they hand over equipment, how much they see that as part of their role is really key. And we know, don't we, if there are good handovers, if they're training people how to use the equipment properly, that can have a knock-on effect in terms of minimizing damages as well. So that's really important. The other thing is that they are the face of your business on site, and they can get access to some sites that salespeople, for example, aren't allowed onto. So they can be really useful for getting leads and getting information and getting names to pass over to sales teams and salespeople, as long as that can be captured and communicated really easily back to the depot. But they also can find out information that can help them be more productive in terms of the off-hire process as well. So just asking the question when they drop something off, when we come to collect that, will it be from this part of the site as far as you know? And some people, some sites, the gates, the entrances are always changing, and they might say, depending on the length of the hire, that you might need to go to another gate. That helps with the overall productivity of your driver in getting people to site. Now, Guy, some people use third-party transport. How can a system help manage those costs?
Right, yeah. So third-party transport is a big part of the rental industry, whether we like it or not. Some companies use 100% third-party transport. Some companies use it just when their drivers are ill. But either way, it's a big cost that we need to try and optimize as best as possible. So how can software help? Well, ideally, again, you would want to have your third-party transport using some sort of browser or third-party application that you have supplied them with that allows them to very simply optimize their routes, know what order they are doing things in, and then once they are with the client, take the signatures, get some photos, so that all of that information can feed directly back into your software. That gives you a unique insight that certainly in the past we haven't been able to have because third parties have been separate from us as rental companies. So that sort of software ability now should be there and should be helping you to get that back. Well, what does that mean? It means that you understand when things have happened. You've got all of the evidence electronically so that you can apply that back when needed. But it also means you can quickly be able to link the purchase orders and the invoices that are received from your third-party companies, being able to link those and understand exactly what has happened and what costs you have incurred. All of that is adding to the efficiency of using that third-party company. Of course, you've got to get those negotiations right at the beginning to make sure you have got the right plan with your third party. Diane, give us a little bit of thoughts about that.
Well, I think having information readily to hand so you can see the trends in spend can be really useful, and that gives you an opportunity to go back and negotiate with your third-party suppliers. And that may not just be around fees, that also might be around the service levels that they're giving you as well. But you need the data in order to be able to have those conversations. Now, where are we in terms of the hire process? Well, we've got our kit on site now, and it's at this point that sometimes things go wrong and you get an on-site breakdown. Now, depending on what piece of kit that is, that can have an impact in terms of the client, the customer's productivity. They may have people standing around because they can't carry out a crucial part of what they're doing, their processes, and a site manager now becomes under real pressure because this is costing him time and money. So when a call comes into you to report a breakdown, you need people on the end of the phone who are helpful and who understand the urgency and the importance of this situation, but who can also calmly talk people through a few checks that they may be able to do just to see if they can get the kit back up and running, or put them in touch with someone who can have that more technical conversation. Because this conversation isn't about dispatching an engineer to a site. This conversation is about a first-time fix and making sure an engineer goes to site equipped to be able to help that customer in that situation. So the people on the end of the phone can ask a few key questions to help identify what was happening prior to the breakdown and communicate that information to the engineer so that the engineer can be thinking about what might have happened on the way to the breakdown, perhaps even taking some parts or spares with them as well. So Guy, how can a system help with a breakdown on site?
Yeah, great. So once we have tried to fix it over the phone and that hasn't worked, then we know we need to get a technician out on site. And what can we do to make this the most efficient process it can be? Well, ideally, we want to make sure that we have software that allows us to map out and plan those technicians. We know that technicians jump around from site to site wherever they're needed. And we need to understand where they are now, how long we think it's going to be until they leave whichever site it is. And then we can then work out which is the best technician to go to the next site. So that's really key to get that optimization piece right, because we've got a lot of technicians out there, they're doing a lot of different things, and we don't want them crossing over and therefore, not being as optimized as they could be. But once they get on site, it's more, again, as Diane was saying, about that first time fix. So what opportunity does the software have to help with that? And we've got ideas like, well, we need to make sure that we're controlling the stock they have in their vans. Is the ERP software actually helping control that? Do we have a van stock solution? And that means that they should be going to site fully stocked, or at least we are aware of what they don't have, so that we can make sure that they have the right tools to do the job. Once they get on site, well, okay, we're thinking about how can we make sure that we have the right information for that technician? So things like, do they have access to the digital manual through the software? Do they have access to the telematics data? Again, ideally through the ERP software and not through individual telematics providers. All of those can really assist the technician. We also want to make sure that they have access to the history of that piece of equipment. Every bit of equipment has a history that can really help those technicians know what's gone wrong in the past and what potentially is now also the problem. So there's a lot of opportunity there for good advanced software to help the technician on site get that first time fix. So then we're going to move on to the off rent of the equipment. And again, lots of opportunity for making sure that the software is really helping you to get that correct. And we've called it here preventing downtime, because in actual fact, from the time that the client is phoning up to say stop the rental of the equipment to the time that that equipment is back ready to be put out with another client, that's downtime. And we want to make sure that that time is as limited as possible, because all of that time is cost to the business. So how do we do that? Well, there's certain things the software should be doing. So for example, if that equipment is not picked up immediately, the software should be alerting constantly your teams to be saying, right, well, look, there is some equipment out there. It's not being charged for, but it's currently sitting on a client's site. We need to go and get it. We can also look at, okay, well, once we're starting to do the optimization of the routing again, is there enough space on the vehicle to go and pick up some equipment? Let's say that vehicle is already out on a route. So we want to understand if there is space on that vehicle, and the planner should be able to see that. Once the driver gets to site, we want to be taking things like a signature, but also photos. We want to do a full set of photos all around that equipment and make sure that we can do the comparison of those photos to when we delivered that equipment. And then when that equipment is coming back from site and comes back into the yard, we also want to make sure that there is a check-in process for that equipment. And ideally, that check-in process needs to be separate from the driver so that we can doubly verify what the driver has said is coming back. So moving on from that, then what we need to do is we need to understand, well, how can we make sure that we have enough information so that if there is a problem with that equipment when it comes back, if there's some damage, if there is some equipment that has not actually arrived back, that we can communicate to that client. And so those photos and having a look at those photos and understanding if there is any differences, or having that check-in process that highlights that, well, hold on a second here, the quantities are not matching. The software should be giving all of that information. It should be alerting and prompting the user, hold on, there's a problem here, and we potentially need to go and start dealing with the client and understanding how we can do that. So Diane, just tell us a little bit about that, because of course now we've got to start to get into people and we've got to start to get into those conversations.
Yeah, and Guy, there is a cost of getting things wrong. And as you've alluded to earlier, when people make mistakes, there might be a cost of rework because things have to be sent out again. There's a cost associated with that. Fortunately, there's no statistics for rework in rental, but I did come across some statistics around rework in construction, which are interesting. That they say on average, 5% of the contract value in construction has to be reworked, which is a huge cost on a project. And what's interesting when things go wrong is your managers need to respond to that situation, not react. And I'm using those words really carefully, because you need managers who are thinking about the situation and who in the moment are coaching that person, having a conversation with that person so that they learn from it. And they also understand the consequences of the action that they carried out or not carried out. Because this isn't about managing costs, it's about eliminating errors. It's about being preemptive, because if not, your invoices go into invoice query and the customer delays payment, and there's a cost to the business of both of those things. So this is where really good training is useful, because it's preemptive, and that's broader training than the stuff that we do. This is about systems training, it's about technical training, it's about any legislation that people may need to comply with so that they understand that. It's also about the really good onboarding and induction training that helps people to understand just how important your customers are in your business, but also those that commercial element, that commercial focus, which will make the business profitable. And one of my favorite phrases is that culture is action, not words. And at a local level, we need managers who are good team managers, who develop a good team culture, which is about helping customers, which is about minimizing errors and mistakes. It's about spotting opportunities. It's about managing costs, but who have the mindset of continuous improvement, because that will help us to be more productive at a depot level. So Guy, things do go wrong from time to time, and people will have to issue credits. There is obviously a cost associated with that, but you've got an interesting take on the cost of credits as well.
Yeah, that's right. So we, having spoken to our clients and having some of those conversations, it's really not necessarily just about the credit note and the value of that credit note itself, although credit notes in the rental industry are significant, and it would be really nice if we could bring those down. But we've got to think about sort of the credit note and the process of a credit note, because the invoice will go out to the client and the client will say, well, I disagree, and there'll be some reason why they disagree. And then what happens is the start of a conversation, and that needs to come back into the rental business. The rental business needs to go and investigate. They need to understand what went wrong, or what is the difference of opinion that the client has. And all of that takes time. Then potentially they need to come to some agreement with the client. And again, that can take time. And then the actual issuing of the credit note and sending it off. So really, we've been told that our clients think every credit note costs $40 on top of the actual value of the credit note. And that is a significant amount of cost in the business that really rental businesses are not focused on and are not seeing, but it is there and it is significant. So that's really important. So how do we prevent those credit notes actually happening? And there's some things we can do that will help with that. So we know that the best way of preventing credit notes is to provide the client with as much information as possible, either before the invoice goes out or once the invoice goes out. Now, that's not going to rule out every credit note, of course, but we think that it will help significantly on many of them. So what can the software do for that? Well, if you've got things like a delivery or a pickup or a service of your equipment, being able to immediately communicate with the client and say, this has happened, here's the signature, this is the date and time, this is the person that signed for it. All of those communications can really help to make sure that you can prove your case when the invoice goes out. But not just that, clients are now asking that when an invoice is sent out for the rental of the equipment, that in actual fact, the rental company is sending out a whole load of other information at the same time. So that might be the delivery note or the pickup note or the service note. But clients are now asking if they can have their own purchase order document sent out to them, and potentially the quote or the contract that got signed originally. Now, all of those things should be able to be managed by your software, and they should be able to automatically go out with the invoice. That means that you are saving a significant amount of time, rather than your team having to go and find all that documentation. The system should be grouping all of that documentation together and sending it out as one to your clients. So that is a really important thing. Help your customer understand as early as possible the costs that are going to be coming on the invoice, and send as much information as you can when that invoice goes. So Diane, just give us a bit more about the link between the people and our costs in this process.
It's interesting, isn't it, Guy? Just listening to you there again, speed is vitally important in the rental sector. How quickly you can respond to customers is absolutely key. And you have to align your processes to the buying processes of your customers, and all customers may have different processes as well. So you need to have the agility to be able to respond to that. And we often see on the training that we run that people just don't understand the importance of cash flow in a business. That burden sits with the finance department or the senior leaders within the business. Their attitude is, look, all our deals are profitable. We've put the required margin in that deal or the required markup on that product, so why worry? And one of the exercises we run for clients is a business simulation, where people can understand the consequences of the decisions that they're making on the bottom line. But what's clever about that exercise is that it also shows the impact of their decisions on cash flow. And that makes them realise just how important cash flow is into a business. Because good credit management processes can help you manage costs. It can be very costly to lose equipment to fraud. We know that's a big issue in the rental sector. But not only that, what if your invoices don't get paid at all if a customer goes bust? So you need to be doing regular credit checks on your customers and being clear about the credit limit. And we know particularly in the tool hire, there are some customers who will have accounts with several companies, and they'll run up to their credit limit with one company and then move on to another. So you've got savvy customers. It's important you think about your credit management processes. Otherwise, you may lose work or lose money, or not get paid for a long time. And the reality is an order isn't an order until the money is in the bank. So Guy, let's just have a look at reporting and how that can help someone manage their costs and manage their business.
Yeah, great. So as we come towards the end of our webinar here, let's just go on to the reporting element. And reporting in a rental business can be at many different levels. We've got our rental administrators, and they want to see reporting on their contracts. Of course, we've got the people responsible for the equipment, and they want to understand the utilization or the amount that it has broken down, and that's by equipment. But then, of course, you've got your management team, your senior leadership team, who want to start to look at some consolidated information. So reporting should be coming out in lots of different ways, either through BI or through standard reports through the system, or potentially just alerting people when things have gone wrong, or alerting potentially a client and telling a client about what they have on rent at any one point in time. Very significant reporting in terms of being able to reduce your costs and get those alerts and get that information correct. So just things like, for example, your scheduled maintenance. You want that reporting to tell you when a piece of equipment actually needs some scheduled maintenance, not taking a guess and therefore maybe getting it wrong by 25%. That means you're being inefficient in your scheduled maintenance. You want that combination of data around revenue, around utilization, around downtime, and around breakdowns for your equipment to make good buying decisions for the future. Really important for a business to be able to combine that data and see exactly what is the most profitable bit of kit, rather than just rely on revenue and utilization. But a whole scope of information at different levels in the business are important. So that concludes our webinar. Diane, I'll let you to finish it off.
Thank you. So the next webinar in our series is on increasing customer satisfaction. As I said, that's absolutely critical for customer retention. Just before we go, though, I want to give you some contact details, because there may be some things that we've said that you would be interested in having a conversation with us about. So on screen now, you can see some QR codes. And if you hold your QR code, your QR scanner on your phones in front of that, that will take you straight to our LinkedIn pages, and feel free to connect with both Guy and myself on LinkedIn. Let us know what you think of this webinar. Our contact details are also on there. It's worth checking out both websites because there's useful information on there as well. So mcsrentalsoftware.com, intelligentdialogue.com as well. And get in touch with Guy if you need to know anything about systems or rental management software. And for any people challenges or people development issues that you're having, I'd be really interested in having a conversation as well. So until we see you next time on the customer satisfaction webinar, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me, and we hope to see you on the next webinar.